So what are the requirements in the good manufacturing practices for SOPs? So they say you have to have SOPs, they have to be written, they have to be available to anyone in the department. So if you have an electronic storing document control system, so you store all of your procedures electronically, that's fine as long as the people doing the testing have access to them. So this becomes particularly important in molecular type settings where you have clean rooms and you have certain flow that you have to follow. You have to make sure that you have computers in each of those areas so that the employees can access the procedures wherever they're working. So the FDA clearly says in the code that if you do any of these tasks, you have to have a procedure to describe them. So you must have a procedure that describes equipment maintenance and calibration. You have to have a procedure for labeling, donor and pre-transfusion testing. So you have to have a procedure that says what you're going to do to test the unit before it's issued and what testing you're going to do on a patient before they get that unit. So why do we have to follow the SOP? This one should be obvious. It provides control for the process, ensures the same outcomes every time. Important instructions so that you don't avoid any safety steps that might be built into the process. And again, it's required by the FDA. So failure to follow SOPs, of course, first thing that comes to mind for a lot of people is disciplinary action. If I don't do what I'm supposed to be doing as an employee, I can be in trouble for that. But it also causes a lot of extra things, like extra work, more money to do retesting. So increase in variations, bypass safety steps, incomplete or incorrect documentation. You can damage equipment by accident. You can get an unacceptable product, and then again, increased costs. So a good example of that is I forgot to write down the temperature of the incubator on the instrument. The instrument doesn't track that. So that's why we have to write it down manually. And we discover it the next day. So what does that mean? We have to repeat every test that was done on that instrument for the day that the temperature wasn't documented. So that's a lot of rework. It could impact patient care if you get a different result. You have to call the physician. If you issued blood on that testing, then you have to send a report to the FDA because we didn't do the maintenance on the instrument that we should have done. So there's a lot of implications if you aren't following SOP. So if we failure to follow the SOP can result in injury to a donor or a patient, death of a donor or a patient, lawsuits. If you're doing any testing for other agencies, like you have a client, you're at risk to lose that client. Some contracts have financial penalties written into them. If you don't do X, Y, and Z, or you have a certain number of failures, then we get this amount of money off of our bill. So different things like that, outside audit findings. And then the FDA can take regulatory action against the firm or an individual. And it can be monetary fines, or they can close the facility. So the FDA is very active. These are statistics from 2011. They're usually a little bit behind in getting their stuff out, but they're very active. So the FDA issued 1,700 warning letters. There were recalls for over 9,000 products and 16 debarments. So a debarment is the individual or that company cannot do any business for any regulated analyte or device or product that the FDA regulates. So say I did something that I shouldn't have been doing and I'm debarred by the FDA. I cannot work in any laboratory that is governed or regulated by the FDA. So in addition to having all this information on the FDA site, so you can look at the FDA site and say which sections of the code are most frequently cited. by investigators when they come into facilities. So this is nice because you can see what other facilities are having issues with. So it's very common that this section 21 CFR 606-100B was cited 111 times by investigators in this year. So we want to look at that section of the code and make sure that we're complying. So it's kind of a proactive thing that you can do as a laboratory. So again, FDA can take action against an individual or an entity as a whole. So it doesn't often take action against an individual, but it does. So in 1997, they indicted an individual at New York Blood Center who was knowingly altering data to hide that blood was not tested for HIV. So he was doing it on purpose. So he was indicted by the FDA and brought to trial for falsifying records. So once the regulatory action is taken, they take it against firms. So in 2012, the Red Cross was fined $9.6 million for good manufacturing violations. In 2010, the Red Cross was fined $16 million. And then this is the last one is an older example, but I just wanted to bring it because it's not a blood center. So Abbott Laboratories in 1999 was fined $1 million plus $15,000 a day for every day that they were out of good manufacturing practices for manufacturing a test kit that is used in a blood service. So they're creating a test that is used to test donor units. They're not following good manufacturing practices, and that was discovered on the FDA field inspection. They generally come every 2 years, but they can come as often as they want to, stay as long as they want to. So they were found to be out of compliance, and so they were fined $1 million plus $15,000 a day for every day that they remained out of compliance. So it's not just blood centers that can get fined, it's anything associated with blood centers. So if you're developing test kits for them. So in addition to fining you money, the FDA publishes this information on their website. And I, like probably most other people in the industry, get email updates from the FDA, and you'll get an email, so-and-so has been fined, so-and-so has been debarred. So you can find all the information on the inspections and compliance and enforcement on the FDA website. So they have a list of who the warning letter was issued to and a copy of the letter. So this is the letter that was sent to the Red Cross in 2012. So it's like they get you in trouble and fine you money, and then they shame you because they put it all over the internet that your firm was out of compliance and you've been fined by the FDA. So it's not pleasant, and it's not a situation that you ever want to find your facility in. So with all these rules and regulations, are there ever any exceptions? So yes, there is written in the code a way to ask for an exception. So if you have a situation, and a lot of them, they're very different. They list them on their website, which things have gotten approved. But the ones that are kind of obvious that you would think may get approved are like the documentation or the storage temperatures for units during Hurricane Katrina were not acceptable. Can we still use these products? We don't have any other products. You know, they take every situation on a case-by-case basis. Generally, if you make that call to CBER, I would expect them not to approve it. I've made several calls to them for different situations. The majority have not been approved. I've had a couple that were. So they basically say, yes, you can use this product with this exception, and then they'll give you a list of things that you have to do. So you can use it if you do this, if you do this, if you do this. So then you have to have all this documentation available that you did all of those things for when the inspectors come to your facility.